Hey everyone, so sorry for the long wait. I'm sure this video is long overdue. I've just been really backed up with midterms lately, and honestly, it's been a little hectic. I haven't even had the time to really sit and eat half the time during the day. So, with that, I think today is finally the day we're going to be jumping into learning about the Asset Manager. Now, this video might be a little bit longer than most of the other ones, just because there's a lot to cover and a lot to understand. I don't want to leave anything out because the Asset Manager is a beast of its own, and there's just so many things you can do with it, and it can really help you in the long run if you set it up right for yourself. So, with that, I really just want to jump into the code and start getting you guys uh, to some basic understanding of how to utilize the asset manager. If you remember where we left off, we had a simple splash screen set up, and this is just my splash screen logo. Please use your own if you wouldn't mind. I prefer to keep what I make unique. I am not the best artist, so I take pride in keeping some of that to myself. But regardless of that, I also happen to forget to dispose of the font. Um, and I feel kind of ashamed because of how much I try to keep that at the front end of always make sure to dispose of stuff. But anyway, I also moved the font kind of further down to the left of the screen so it wasn't in the middle. I think I had it at 120 and 120 last time, which was like dead center. Um, so other than that, I think those are all the changes I made. I really haven't touched this code or had a chance to even look at it for a while. Um, so one thing I also want to change real quick is I noticed that that font was a little hard to read, so I'm going to change that to black for now. Import bad logic color, um, just so that's a little bit easier to see. And other than that, I think we can just start moving into getting a loading screen set up using our asset manager. So first thing we want to do is actually have an asset manager to work with. So that's all we need to add at the top there. And then in our create method in our main application class, we want to initialize it. So equals new asset manager. And well, that's about it for this side. Now, once we start making our loading screen, that's where the real business will start coming in. But remember, because this is going to be keeping track of all of our resources and textures and atlases and whatnot, we need to remember to dispose or tell it to dispose of all those resources. If I spell that right, there we go. Um, so that's all we need to do here in our main application. So let's go into our screens, make a new screen called the loading screen. And that's just going to implement screen just like our splash screen did. And then implement all those methods, get a basic constructor set up, loading screen, and then that's going to take in our application app and then import that. And we also need a reference. Actually, that needs to be final also. Sorry, this is just some more boilerplate code that we had written before. Follow along if you want, but pretty much it's going to look kind of similar to our splash screen, just without this splash logo and whatnot. So private final application app, and then this dot app equals app. Okay, and what else? So I'm probably going to want our clear color buffer bit going on here in our render method. Okay, that's good. What else? So we want the update method also. That's going to take in delta as a parameter and private void. Yeah, I might as well just make it private. Private void update float delta. Okay. I think that should be everything to start. So Now, to talk a little bit more about the assets. So what we're going to basically do here is we're going to have our asset manager keep track of how much progress it's made on loading the assets we told it to. And we're essentially going to be queuing up all the assets all in one method, and then in our update method, it'll tell the asset manager to keep checking to see if it's done loading those assets, if it's able to be able to use them now anywhere else. And so um, I think to keep track of the progress visually, I want to be able to do that with just some basic boxes like a loading bar or something. So I'm going to do private shape renderer. I'm just going to call that shape renderer. And I'll briefly touch on this, but I won't go too into detail because I think I might want to even use that as another tutorial video to go more in depth on. And that is disposable, so I want to dispose that right away. And then, so we also, like I mentioned, we want to queue up the resources we want to use. And the one image or texture that we have really right now is just this splash image. So I'm going to show you guys how to swap out this code once we get our asset manager all configured and whatnot. Let's see. So shape renderer also needs to be initialized. The shape renderer equals new shape renderer. Okay, that's pretty simple. And then I'm going to create a method called queue assets. So anytime we need a new asset to be queued in the loading screen, we can just do it there. And so private void queue assets. Okay, come on, there we go. Okay, and so yeah, I think that's all we need there. And then because we made a reference to our app and because we made our assets public, we can be able to call load. And this is something that's going to kind of look a little weird to you guys at first. Those who are too familiar with Java or are just kind of getting started but know the basics and whatnot, how to use objects and object-oriented structuring and whatnot. So this is a texture. When this file is loaded, it turns it into a texture object, and that is a texture class, by the way. And so we want to load this image, so we can just take this, come over here, throw it in our load, and this load method takes two parameters. The location of the asset you're going to be loading and the class type that the asset will keep it kind of tailored to, so to speak. So if you load it, if you want a texture, you just pass texture.class. So what you're saying here is, I want to load this, whatever this is, this resource, and I want it to be considered a texture that I can use later. If you have like a texture atlas, you can do texture atlas also. There's quite a few of those loader methods, and if there aren't any available, like let's say you have a special object that you want to load, you can make your own kind of loaders here. And I might brush on that a little later down the road, or I might just link you guys to the wiki. It has a pretty good explanation on it. It's kind of uncommon for people to start using their own kind of loader unless I do know texture regions aren't supported by default, but that's mostly because you're going to be using a texture anyway and probably throwing it into a texture region. But anyway, so this is our first asset that we're telling our asset manager to load. And once you start getting more, it'll kind of look like this. You'll just have a bunch of these load calls here, and that just queues them up to be loaded one by one. And in order for our asset manager to know to load those, we're going to come down here in our update method and go to if app.assets.update. Then we're going to switch screens, and what this does, app.assets.update, is it'll keep returning false until all the assets you told it to load are finished loading. And once it's finished loading, then you can tell your application to do anything in here. So like once we're done loading, go to our splash screen. That's our basic goal of this video right now. So we're just going to say app.setScreen new splash screen and pass it the app reference again. So nothing too crazy going on right here. This is pretty straightforward. We really don't have anything else going on. This, for the most part, we're making a really basic loading screen. We haven't even set up the shape renderer. However, what we've done here so far will work. It is a workable loading screen. We've already set it up. It just shows a white screen, and then once it's done, it'll just throw itself to the splash screen. So I think what I want to do is just throw a system.out.println here for some debug, and just to show you guys. So screen is, oh, you know what? Actually, I can take that font that we made. So app.batch.begin, app.font.draw, app.batch, and then the text. Screen is loading. So that'll tell us what the current screen is. It's going to be 2020. App.batch.end. Remember, begin and end calls. We're going to go to our splash screen real quick, and I want to kind of format this text to be a little similar. So screen splash. All right, and so yeah, it's gonna move pretty quick. I can't really guarantee you're gonna be able to see it say loading screen, just how fast it's probably gonna go. But let's check it out. Look in the bottom left there of the. Okay, yeah, that was almost instantaneous. So sorry about that. We probably won't be able to demonstrate that very well, but you can tell in the. I wonder if I should just do the system.out.println for the sake of being able to show you that debug. Loading, and then in the show method of the splash screen, splash, we'll load it one more time just so you guys can see. Oh, you know what? Yeah, that was my fault. Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense. We did have a little bit left in here to take care of, I guess. So switch us out for the loading screen. So I actually go to the loading screen as the first screen. Sorry about that, everyone. Let's play it one more time. Maybe we will see it this time. Okay, we kind of saw it. But yeah, so you see here, loading, splash, it jumped right into both of them. So we got the proper kind of mechanics going now, but now we want some visual to it. So let's see. Or you know what? We should actually start swapping these out. So this texture that we use, in order to be able to retrieve assets from your asset manager, you just kind of take this out. You can remove all that, and then you can do app.assets.get, and then you can get the file name, and that's going to be image.splash.png like we had. And again, you're going to want to coordinate what kind of object it is so it doesn't return just a basic object. So, well, I guess if you did assign it a class type, then it will automatically return that class type. But just for keeping track of, like, in your code for neatness, so you know what's what and you know what you're expecting, it's probably best to just do that. So now that we have that, we can actually, you know, we could one-line this, but I'm going to keep them separate just for the sake of neatness and code readability. So we're gonna run it one more time just so you guys can see that now that we have our asset loaded, we can just call this and it'll retrieve a reference to that image, and then we can use it anywhere else in our project. So we're in the splash, there's our image. Perfect, everything's working just fine still. So let's go back into our loading screen and let's get a little fancy now. So we're gonna have a private float progress, and this progress equals 0. So this is going to be how much we've loaded. We're going to compare it against how much the asset manager has loaded. And there's a nice little method in there that you can use to be able to figure that out. And I believe app.assets.getProgress. Yeah, it's just right there for you. And it does return a float, so you have a pretty nice percentage output rather than an int. It's between 0 to 1. Just remember that. So let's see, how do we want to approach this? Yeah, so we want to, I think just to start, I'm going to do progress equals app.assets.getProgress. So that'll be pretty quick to the draw. It might not even make it to that, honestly. I think I might even just set that before it. So there we go. And then down here, we're going to want to draw with our shape renderer. So the shape renderer is pretty nice for drawing basic geometric shapes, pretty either flat or outlined shapes, or I'm sorry, filled or outlined shapes, or just basic lines and whatnot. And to use it, you kind of use it just like a batch, like a sprite batch like we have down here, where you have a begin call and an end call. And so you do shape renderer.begin, and you're going to want to pass it a shape type. This is where you determine whether it's a filled line, a point, that kind of deal. Line is kind of the outline. Filled is obviously a filled object, and we're going to do filled this time. So just import that, okay, and then we want to also close that by calling the end. And what else? So we want to draw, I think I'm just going to have a basic rectangle that's going to show up in the center of the screen, and it'll be about the width of the screen too, and it'll slowly fill up until all the assets are loaded. And we'll kind of be able to notice this along the way once we start getting further into the game and have more images to load. It'll start taking a little bit longer here or there. Like I mentioned before, the more assets you have to load, the longer it'll take to actually load those assets. So let's draw a box by doing shape renderer.rect, and that's for a rectangle. And you give it an X and a Y and width and height, and that's pretty straightforward stuff. So we're going to do, I think, would we be able to do batch dot get, is there a view? No, okay, so we can do app.camera.viewport height, and we're going to divide that by 2, or that needs to be width. So we're actually going to do, sorry about this, just kind of get myself oriented with what I want. So 32, and then app.camera.viewport height divided by 2 minus 8, and then it's going to be app.camera.viewport width minus 64. To counterpart the 32, you normally have to double on the width of how much you subtract. And then app.camera.viewport height divided by 2 and that's going to be +8. And we can end that there. So let's see. And we also want to set a color. We're going to use black just for the time being. Use the GDX bad logic color. So this is going to be the back part of our progress bar so we can watch it fill up. And I'm going to start adding the front part of it by having another one, and this one is going to be, we'll just make it about blue. App.camera viewport height. Yeah, so these two are the same. Now this one is going to be a little bit different. You're going to want to multiply this by your progress. So this will be essentially like the full size of this bar, but your progress will be 0 to 1. So as you meet the 100% progress, it'll slowly fill up the bar until it hits 1, and so then this becomes the full width of that first bar, so it's filled. So just some understanding of the math that's going on there. Let's see, so yeah, let's run it real quick. I wish there was a way we could slow it down or something, but okay, that bar was huge from what I saw. Viewport height divided by 2. Oh gosh, you know what? I'm doing something way wrong here. Okay, that needs to be 8. Or rather 16, because I need to double up on what I took away. Okay, is that actually loading? You know what? I should probably just get rid of the set screen thing there, just for the time being. And I should probably fix this up here too. 16. Okay, so there's our filled progress bar, and there we go. We kind of got the kinks worked out. However, I'm noticing that our camera isn't centered. Is that viewport height divided by 2? What happens if that isn't divided by 2? Where does the progress bar go? And then it's too far. All right. This isn't something I was expecting. 'Cause that should be right. Let's see. So our application is 420, so maybe I should just try 420, 210. I wonder where that'll put us. Does that put us in the center? I mean, it should. It should put us in the center. Yeah. What's our camera doing? Why is our camera so off? Oh gosh, okay. There was some mishaps there, and I should just change those for the sake of what I'm doing. V height, yeah, don't, make sure when you're doing the resizing and everything and whatnot, just make sure you're setting the camera to be the right size. So we can put that back and everything will be fine now, I bet. All right, there we go. Okay, cool. So now we got our little loading bar, and we probably won't be able to notice anything until later down the road. But yeah, that's pretty nice. There is one more thing I want to introduce you guys to real quick. That's going to be getting some interpolation using the math utilities provided by LibGDX. And you know what? I bet I have to import it before it's going to let me. It's very stubborn that way. Interpolate, what? interpolate. I know it's in there somewhere. Lerp. Okay, there it is. Okay, so from value progress, and then it's going to go to this value, and it's going to do that at 0.1 lerp speed. This is kind of similar to some stuff I've introduced in another video where it's that whole like a plus, or no, it's like yeah, a plus b minus a times lerp factor. And so using this equation, just a linear interpolation, you have your a, which is what you want to get to, or yeah, you have your a and you have your b. So it's, and then your lerp factor here. So it's just kind of along the same lines there. I'm sure you've all seen interpolation enough now to understand it. Yeah, see, there we go. That's we kind of got some visuals there for our loading bar, which is what I kind of wanted to show you guys. So it's probably good that we're using that. So we get that nice smooth loading bar. It's not just an instantaneous jump. So with that, I wonder, end progress equals app.assets.get progress. Get progress. Okay. I want to include this so it actually finishes the whole loading bar before it switches into the app screen. So with that, I think our loading screen is pretty much done, and we're going to be coming back to it to add more assets to queue, but which I think, just so we don't have to keep climbing back to the bottom of this method, we can just throw it right here, kind of right below the constructor, just for ease of access. And I think that's all we really need to do for the time being with the loading screen. And is it gonna switch screens? Did I turn that on? System.out.println. Progress. The joys of debugging. Sorry about this. App.assets.get progress. Why are those not ever equal? I'd imagine they'd have to be by that lerp method. Oh, that's a little sad there. I had more faith in LibGDX like that. I increase that to 0.11. Is that going to work? Just a little bit of a jump on the multiplication. Well, that's unfortunate. I wonder if just doing that will be a smooth transition. I still want to be able to see that loading bar, but I think it's just going to jump. Yeah. Okay. Put that back. I'm going to do that minus 0.01f just to be a little bit lazy. So just to make up for that loss of precision. Wow, really? 0.1. I guess it hits it a lot faster than I expected. Well, anyway, our loading screen works. We'll probably notice that loading bar be a lot longer over time, but hey, that's kind of the goal of this video, is just getting the asset manager up and running. So just some review. I think it's been kind of a good idea to add some review of what we learned today. We got our asset manager created in our main application, and with that we made it public so we can access it anywhere in our game by the final reference and all our screens. And don't forget to dispose. Always dispose of everything you can. Can't stress it enough. Make it so your fonts are actually able to be read or readable on screen. We also learned how to load assets from our asset manager by calling app.assets.get. But do keep in mind, this will fail. You'll get an error if you haven't loaded this specific texture. So if you want, you can do some error checking to make sure it's loaded beforehand. And I'll brush up on that a little bit later once we get into level loading. Or something on that, I'm sure, but you can do something along the lines of app.assets.isLoaded, and you can check image splash.png, and with that check you'll be able to make sure that a certain texture has loaded and whatnot. And then we also learned how to kind of use a shape renderer to draw some boxes, set some colors. It's just like the batch. And we also learned how to keep track of the progress that the asset manager is doing by calling the get progress method. And we also learned what the app assets update method does, and that'll let us know when it's done loading all those textures and whatnot by returning a true once it's done loading. And we also learned how to queue up some assets to be loaded, which is another good useful thing to do. And so yeah, with that, I think we're all good to go with just getting a basic asset manager. Over time, I will still show you all the code that I write towards getting the asset manager, keeping it clean and whatnot, and making sure you load all the assets in the right locations. You won't necessarily be doing all your loading here, just for the sake of resource efficiency. Once your game really starts getting bigger, especially for 3D games and whatnot, all those textures and meshes and whatnot, you'll want to make sure you can drop them and just load them back when you go into another loading screen in between scenes. And we might even be able to have a dynamic loading screen where we send it a list of assets to load with their respective class types. But that's a lot of extra stuff that won't come for a while and might not even be in this project just because of how small this project is. So with that, I hope you guys like this kind of extended video. I'm a little bit rusty again, so apologies there for all the little hiccups we experienced. But I am gonna keep trying to jump back onto this, making sure I at least get a video out once a week. And I know that's kind of sparse, but it's all I can really afford at the moment, time-wise. It's until summer, things are going to be moving kind of slow. But once summer comes, you guys are going to be really happy with what I've got going for you. So with that, hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe always helps as usual. And hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.